Sisi receives $1.8 billion. This is the second recipient. The fact that three basically president decided to cancel a meeting jointly, it's not only because of the protests or what happened in Gaza, because they feel they were not heard. They feel that the president and this administration basically doesn't have a plan, and the whole plan is manage the conflict. They've been advocating, this administration and the Israelis, privately and publicly, to solve the conflict, meaning why don't you join basically with the whole Arab community and go back to the 2002 Arab initiative, which tells Israel we are willing all jointly, willing to recognize you on one condition, basically to give Palestinians their freedoms. That initiative basically was sidelined and rejected by the Israelis, and now they decided to do with multiple Arab leaders, but not everybody. And one of the things that Sisi actually, and it stunned me when Sisi received Blinken last week and released that video, basically, schooling Blinken. This is when I realized that even Sisi, who's, very close to the Israelis, very close to the Americans, he feels the pressure. He feels that he is under stress, that his regime is threatened by this conflict.
It's such an important point, because this is the challenge now for the Israelis. Arab leaders like Sisi are feeling an intense amount of pressure. It's exacerbated when things like the hospital attack happen. It's exacerbated when Israel says we might cut off food, water, etc. Does Israel recognize that that is an impediment to their objectives in this war?
Well, that's the right question. And today, people I talk to who are close to the White House, as well as people who worked in this part of the world as diplomats for many, many years, they're saying that the tectonic plates have shifted today because of the event at the hospital, whoever is responsible. And the situation now is that the leaders of the Arab world, who you were just referring to, they're now under enormous pressure because they don't want these demonstrations. The demonstrations until now have been modest in size. That's where we left off, you and I, on Friday. I said, watch these demonstrations. And now they don't want to put down these demonstrations of their own people. And so now this is all loose. It has been loosened, unleashed by what happened today, whoever the responsibility is. But already there was a building humanitarian catastrophe visible to anyone of any political belief could watch on television and see this land, this tight landmass with 2 million people and nowhere to go. So now the tectonic plates, as was said to me today, they've shifted, and it also means that Biden has to come up with a different agenda for his trip. And that's the next question, and I know a little bit about
I do wonder, though, watching the White House navigate this, they are treading extremely carefully. They have the evidence that Israel says it has. And yet, on Air Force One, Kirby didn't really touch it. What do you make of how they've approached dealing with this particular bombing that is the potential lighter on top of the fire?
Look, the White House understands that last week alone, Israel dropped 6,000 bombs. Understands that this is the amount of bombs that America dropped in Afghanistan or in Raqqa in 1 year. So they understand that they understand that Israelis are emotional in this moment and maybe traumatized, and they are being led by their anger and fear. And in that volatile situation, there might be evidence that actually it might be Israel, but also
trauma is real.
Trauma and anger, of course, nobody's denying that, and the pain. They understand that. In the same time, they also understand, and in the past, Israel committed certain crimes and denied them. Shireen Abu Akleh last year, in 2009, when they bombed basically Lebanon, they denied it, and evidence suggested that they did it. But also, we remember the 3 children walking in Gaza on the beach. They struck them with a missile. We had a journalist, an American journalist, that filmed it. They denied, and then they admitted. So, they don't trust completely. I think, that this cannot turn out to be an Israeli strike. For now, we don't know because we have no eyes on the grounds. We have nobody to confirm anything.
You were talking about, Carl, the American objective, the Biden objective for this trip, but just in general, shifting here. Where do you think it stands tonight?
First of all, I don't think we're here to adjudicate the conflict between the Israelis and Palestinians. It's been ongoing since early in the 20th century and even farther back than that. That we've got a situation today in which the world as we know it, in this crucial part of the world, is in danger of blowing up.
Yes.
And that we have certain players, especially President Biden, especially Netanyahu, especially the Arab leaders, who are all trying in their different way to deal with this situation. And in terms of what Biden had intended, people I talked to today who were very close to the White House, he had intended to go with a strong message to Netanyahu of restraint in terms of the campaign, the military campaign. Get in, get out as quickly as possible. It's going to be terrible. But the idea of trying to keep the Israelis from going into Gaza, that was not really going to be on the table, according to people. Well, that's tonight. So tonight I talked to some of the same people I've been talking to all along. And they're saying, look, they don't know. They haven't talked to the president about it in the last 12 hours. But the agenda has got to change. And is it a far-off fantasy of perhaps changing the order of things to try and achieve a ceasefire first? Is that a possibility? People, I think, are looking at it. And also there's a change in the journalism in Israel. That there are a lot of journalists in Israel, and Haaretz, other places, that are saying, we need to come up with a ceasefire. There's a piece in the New Yorker by the editor, David Remnick, that puts this whole situation in a different, humane context. So things are moving.
It will not be enough, Carl. I'm sorry to say.
No, I'm not saying
It's not,
that it will be.
what the Arab Street is telling you today,
Yes.
that even a ceasefire will not be enough. Only a political solution, because there's no military solution.
Well, I think every sentient person believes there has to be a political solution in the long run.
But not in the long run
and,
now, because
but-
to go back to the status quo, that's why we are here. We had 5 wars. We had endless, 17-year siege. We had
To
basically
get to
one
where you're
attack
saying,
after one
you
attack.
have to have a ceasefire first. You can't have this
But the
discussion.
objective will have to be a solution, I hope.
Well,
Neither of you, I mean, I just